welcome to another episode of World of Tanks at Ngani Titan. We're on an encounter battle on Prokhorovka. I'm on the Tier 10 American heavy tank, the T110E5. There was an operation there over a week ago, was it, for day premium at if you were playing Tier 10 tanks, and I managed to complete it. With a reasonable number of battles. But I was mostly playing the FE215B183, the Death Star, and playing it really, really badly, although I did have one really good battle in terms of damage output, which I probably will share later on during the week. But this battle's on Prokhorovka and its encounter. Now, I tend to play the centre in heavy tanks, particularly heavy tanks with good turret, with good strong turrets in Prokhorovka, because basically they can take on punishment, and I think their job is to prevent people from crossing over the centre to defend the centre. And also, if you have spotting and tanks on the hill, you can use tanks from a central position, particularly on the other side of the ridge there on my right, to shoot at tanks on the hill. And the hill is very important in the encounter version of this game, obviously, because the encounter is in the village. So with the hill overlooking the village, you can protect cappers in the village very, very effectively. So I'm coming up here. There's no artillery, so you can, maneuver relatively safely. Sometimes with artillery, you really can't afford to linger, and you really have to keep the tank moving. And with heavy tanks, that can be quite a problem. So pushing, I do what I'm normally doing at the start. I just push around the ridge, peek over it. Nobody shot at me, so I'm going to take the opportunity putting around into that E100. I have been picked up, but like I said, I haven't come under fire. No, I did get it detected, I detected there, so somebody had pointed a gun at me by the end of that session. However, there are targets starting to appear on the hill, so I'm going to take the opportunity to shoot those targets. Since the hills, well, the hill has become, I think there was a time the hill was extremely dominant, because it really did allow you to shoot into the centre of the field quite effectively. But the hill has become, I think, less dominant, because they've lowered the hill, and the top of the hill now is extremely vulnerable to fire from the centre of the field, so people tended not to go there. And if you push too far up in the hill, you'll get shot at from both sides. So the hill tends to be a spotting thing, where people are spotting people on the hill at the other side and hoping that artillery or players in the centre of the field can get rid of them, because it's very difficult to do it from positions on the hill, particularly on the southern side, because there's not actually a lot of room on the southern side to deploy tanks, and unless you have very, very good gun depression, you frequently won't get a decent shot on the tanks on the northern side. You're really depending on the guys in the centre of the map, and these guys exposing themselves. And we can see now what I'm beginning to fear, which is that the position on the hill, the combination of the guys on the hill spotting people and people on the railway tracks, are effectively making it impossible for us to reset the cap, and there's a danger that the enemy will cap out. So I'm going to come over here by the railway tracks and try and get rid of some of these tanks. So that fellow gets himself wiped out. Crossing the railway tracks at this stage of the game is foolish, because there's just too many guns lined up in this location. I can get the gun depression here to sneak shots to people on the railway track with relatively low risk. I mean, yeah, I'm going to expose the lower front plate momentarily, but then I can come up here behind the railway locomotive, and I can do it without risking the lower front plate, because I don't want to keep coming up on the same location again and again, because then somebody in the hill would just line his gun up and just catch me when I'm coming out. So we've whittled away that T10, and he's not in a position that he's going to escape from, because he's just taking another hit, so we finish him off. So I'm actually in a pretty good location here, and I probably should have made more use of it. We bounced that one off the E100, and I should probably have stayed in this location a little bit longer. It was one of the mistakes I think I've made in this game, because that Star was operating down there, and I would get shots in on him, or at least drive him away from covering the gap in the where the railway bridge is. We managed to get rid of the E100, although I'd been better off using high explosives. Now this, I think I did this a little prematurely, although it wasn't a bad move per se, because it still allowed me to continue the fight and get involved with tanks that I couldn't from my previous position. There was just the FE215B 183 down there, and for a good bit of the remainder of the game there was actually nobody really spotting him, so I was getting the odd opportunity to shoot at him, but I was getting a lot more targets up here on the hill, so I think I did a pretty good job. The other problem, of course, was that once I came out here, I was much more exposed to enemy fire, so I was taking the odd hit. But I think while I was here, I was doing a pretty solid job, because I was really making life difficult for these guys on the hill, who otherwise would have had a strong advantage against our tanks at the other side of the hill, because, like I said, they have more room to deploy. They can deploy across a wider front, so it's harder to focus fire on them, and they can come up in different areas, so you can't kind of pre-align, knowing that they're going to have to come up within a very short range, within your telescoped view range, and it was very easy to readjust your target onto them. But we're starting to run out of targets, and they're starting to get more cautious. Obviously, they have learned the lesson. Now, again, I get an opportunity to shoot down on the railway line here, and I damage the ammo rack of the Death Star. But I think I should probably have stayed here a little bit longer. There's a couple of tanks down the field, and there are these guys over here. So there's a question of what to do. Nobody's presenting me with regular targets at this point in time. We knock another chunk off that E100. They're very dangerous tanks, because they're very strongly armoured, and they've got quite a lot of hit points, and they hit pretty hard. Bounced that one, and I bounced the return shot. So the enemy is trying to push the hill again, and I think we might get a few more opportunities. Though that particular section of the hill is they're in pretty low ground there, and I bounced that one, I think, or missed completely. So they're not giving me much of a target anymore. They're not going up as far as they used to earlier. Don't have a clean shot in the E100 there. He's probably behind the building, or mostly behind the building, and then a Guerrilla 15 moves into the cap circle, or the edge of the cap circle. Thought I might be able to put one through the turret of the M103 there, but he's waving his turret around quite a bit, and he's actually, he's not making it easy, should we say, to hit him. And that one missed. That one, if it hit, should have gone through, but I don't think it hit at all. I think it probably went over, or went wide, I'm not sure. So I decided to move down. Now, in and of itself, that's not the worst of ideas, but I was starting to lose focus a little bit. I wasn't as clear in my mind as to what I wanted to do, and I paid for it later on, because I allowed myself to be sort of baited into doing something foolish. It does give me a fresh angle on the tanks on the edge of the hill, which forces them into a more disadvantageous position, but it does expose me to the tanks to my north, and I probably should have pulled back closer to the railway tracks and just dealt with the tanks to my north systematically, rather than continuing to focus on these guys. A shot or two to keep them occupied might have been a good idea, but I'm now starting to take damage, and I took damage from that E100. which was a very nicely placed shot, and it actually baited me into coming after him. But I made the mistake of I should have loaded high explosives. I shouldn't have gone after an E100 with regular ammunition loaded. I bounced the shot because while the turret was flat from one perspective, that turret slopes backwards, and since he was coming up a hill, it was sloped at an even more extreme angle. So the chances of me penetrating him on that angle were almost nil. Whereas if I'd hit him with explosives, he'd so few hit points left that I might have taken him out. However, the rest of my team had managed to take up the slack. The Guerrilla 15 did pretty well for itself, and at this stage there's only one enemy tank left, which is some guy hiding up in the corner, an M103. Seems to be quite a few of them around. And he gets quickly finished off, and that's it, it's game over. So I managed to avoid doing anything really stupid until it was too late to matter to the enemy team. However, in terms of my overall performance, I think, in terms of damage, I think it's one of my best performances in the T110E5. I got nearly 6,000 damage. Blocked nearly 3,500, got a first class mastery badge. We came second by experience after another T110E5 and above an E100. And the Guerrilla 15 was fourth. So the team did pretty well. Very satisfying game, really, in many respects, except, you know, towards the end there where I started to lose focus a little bit and not have a clear idea of what it is that I wanted to be doing. So anyway, I hope you found the game interesting, and if you did, please consider giving it a like, and thank you for watching. Please consider giving the channel a subscription, and I'll catch you all again soon. Bye.